On December 7, 1941, amidst the chaos of Pearl Harbor, Marine Gunnery Sergeant Tom Brewster found himself pinned behind a burning warehouse. His sights were set on a Japanese pilot, positioned 800 yards distant, who was relentlessly strafing defenseless survivors adrift in the oil-slicked water. Through his standard military telescopic sight, the target was merely an indistinct smudge. Nevertheless, he fired. The shot went wide, leaving the pilot to continue his lethal assault, seemingly impervious at such an extreme range. 3 months later, within the confined space of a Pittsburgh optical establishment, a German émigré named John Unertl surveyed the Marine Corps' antiquated World War I-era scopes with evident disdain. These Lyman A5 scopes could, at best, achieve a range of 400 yards on an optimal day. Young Marines were perishing because their equipment simply lacked the necessary reach to engage effectively. Unertl then slid his own invention across the workbench, an 8-power civilian target scope originally intended for weekend shooting competitions. "This scope," he declared, his accent thick, "was never meant for VAR." Yet, as Captain Van Orton peered through its exceptionally clear optics, suddenly perceiving targets 1,000 yards away with astonishing clarity, a profound question arose. How did a delicate civilian scope, dismissed by military experts as too intricate for battlefield deployment, become the linchpin of America's most formidable sniper program? On December 7, 1941, the early morning sun cast elongated shadows across the placid waters of Pearl Harbor, bathing the battleships in hues of gold and gray that would soon be overwhelmed by darker tones. At precisely 07:55 hours, the initial wave of Japanese aircraft descended from the western sky, their engines roaring, obliterating the serene Sunday morning sounds of a naval installation at peace. Within moments, the meticulously ordered world of the United States Pacific Fleet devolved into a maelstrom of chaos, smoke, and the deafening roar of exploding ordnance. Marine Gunnery Sergeant Tom Brewster had been en route to the mess hall when the first bombs detonated on Fort Island. A seasoned veteran of 20 years, his hands calloused and his nerves steady from countless hours on the rifle range, Brewster possessed an instinctive tactical acumen that distinguished career Marines from those who served only briefly. As explosions erupted across the harbor and machine gun fire raked the wooden barracks, he did not seek shelter like the younger Marines around him. Instead, he sprinted towards the armory. The familiar weight of the Springfield rifle settled in his hands as he chambered around and adjusted the leather sling with practiced efficiency. The Lyman scope, mounted above the bolt, was standard issue, a 5-power optic with a 3/4-inch objective lens, a piece of equipment the Corps had utilized since the previous global conflict. Brewster had qualified as an expert marksman with this very setup numerous times on the known distance ranges at Quantico, consistently hitting the 10 ring at 600 yards under controlled circumstances. However, Pearl Harbor that morning offered no such controlled conditions. Through the drifting smoke and the fiery glow of burning fuel oil, Brewster identified his target. A Japanese pilot aboard a Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber was executing a low strafing run across the harbor, his machine guns chattering as he aimed at sailors struggling in the oil-slicked water. The wounded and dying lay scattered across the surface like broken dolls, their white uniforms stark against the black petroleum that seemed to coat everything it touched. The pilot banked his aircraft in a slow turn, lining up for another pass at the helpless survivors. Brewster dropped into a prone position behind a concrete barrier, his elbows finding a firm grip on the rough surface. The distance to the target was instantaneously calculated in his mind. 800 yards, perhaps 850. Under normal circumstances, with known distance targets and match-grade ammunition, such a shot would be demanding but achievable for a Marine of his skill. But these were far from normal circumstances. The Lyman scope's 5-power magnification reduced the aircraft to little more than a dark silhouette against the smoke-laden sky. At 800 yards, the pilot himself was invisible, a mere theoretical presence within a machine moving with deadly intent through Brewster's constrained field of vision. The scope's reticle, designed for stationary targets on meticulously maintained ranges, appeared utterly inadequate for tracking a moving aircraft whose speed and trajectory shifted with each passing second. Brewster's breathing deepened as his training took over. Lead the target. Factor in the distance. Account for the crosswind carrying the acrid scent of burning vessels across the harbor. His finger found the familiar resistance of the trigger, that precise point where an additional ounce of pressure would send the 150-grain bullet downrange at 2,800 feet per second. The rifle recoiled against his shoulder with a sharp crack that was instantly swallowed by the overwhelming cacophony of destruction echoing across the harbor. Through the scope, Brewster observed his bullet sail harmlessly behind the aircraft, a clean miss, vanishing into the pandemonium without impact. The pilot continued his grim work, his machine guns stitching lines of death across the water where American sailors fought desperately for their lives against an enemy they could neither reach nor effectively confront. Brewster chambered another round, his movements automatic despite the bitter taste of failure. The aircraft was now banking away, ascending toward the relative safety of altitude, beyond the reach of American small arms. In 30 seconds of controlled breathing and careful aim, the Marine had absorbed a lesson that would haunt the Corps throughout the nascent months of the Pacific War. Their equipment was woefully insufficient for the engagement distances of modern combat. 3 months hence, the conflict had transformed from a surprise assault into a grueling campaign of island-hopping warfare, where individual marksmanship could prove decisive between mission success and catastrophic failure. At Marine Corps headquarters in Washington, casualty reports arrived daily from locales such as Wake Island, Bataan, and Guadalcanal. Young Marines trained in the known distance shooting techniques of peacetime ranges were discovering that Japanese snipers consistently outranged them, picking off American forces from positions that existing equipment could not effectively engage. Captain George O. Van Orton of the Marine Corps Equipment Board comprehended these limitations with the acute clarity born of personal experience. A competitive marksman who had secured multiple championships at Camp Perry, Van Orton combined the analytical precision of an engineer with the practical wisdom of a combat officer who had personally evaluated every piece of equipment he endorsed. His office walls were adorned with the commendations and trophies of a shooting career spanning 2 decades. However, the reports crossing his desk painted a starkly different picture of American marksmanship capability under combat conditions. The journey to Pittsburgh on that frigid February morning represented more than a routine equipment evaluation. Van Orton carried the burden of mounting casualties and the growing conviction that American forces were engaging an enemy who fully grasped the tactical advantage of superior optics, armed with obsolete tools. The train journey through the Pennsylvania countryside afforded him time to review the technical specifications once more, though he had already committed every detail of the current standard to memory. The Lyman A5 scope embodied the pinnacle of American military optics in 1942. It was a reliable, robust design offering adequate performance under the controlled conditions for which it had been developed. Its 5-power magnification provided sufficient target resolution for known distance shooting up to 600 yards. The 3/4-inch objective lens gathered adequate light for clear visibility during optimal conditions. Its internal adjustment mechanisms were simple and sturdy, engineered to withstand the rough handling inherent in military equipment. Yet, adequate performance under controlled conditions was proving insufficient for the realities of Pacific theater combat, where engagement distances frequently exceeded 800 yards and environmental conditions challenged every assumption about equipment reliability. Van Orton had read enough after-action reports to understand that while American marksmanship training was exemplary, The equipment provided was failing the Marines who depended on it. The small optical shop on Liberty Avenue appeared unremarkable from the street. Its modest facade was sandwiched between a hardware store and a delicatessen in a neighborhood where generations of immigrant craftsmen had honed their trades. But within, John Unertl Sr. had been quietly revolutionizing precision optics with the same meticulous attention to detail that had long made German manufacturing synonymous with unparalleled quality worldwide. The rejection letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late spring 1942, delivered by courier to the Marine Corps Equipment Board offices in Washington with the bureaucratic efficiency that characterized military correspondence during wartime. Captain George O. Van Orton read the terse paragraphs twice before setting the document aside, his jaw tightening with each carefully worded denial. Colonel William Sterling's signature appeared at the bottom in bold ink, followed by the official seal that transformed a recommendation into policy with administrative finality. Any new sniper rifle system will be based on the proven M1903 Springfield platform, the letter stated with bureaucratic certainty. The Winchester Model 70 proposal lacks sufficient field testing under combat conditions to warrant adoption during ongoing operations. We do not change horses midstream. The decision reflected institutional thinking that prioritized established systems over innovative solutions, a conservative approach valuing reliability above performance enhancements. At Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the 3-month evaluation program had generated data that told a different story. Marine armorers had conducted exhaustive testing of both the Winchester Model 70 and modified M1903 Springfield rifles, both platforms fitted with John Unertl's 8-power civilian scope. The results were remarkable by any standard of military accuracy. Consistent 3.5-inch groups at 600 yards with match ammunition, a level of precision exceeding existing military specifications by significant margins. Master Sergeant Bill Harrison had overseen much of the field testing with the skeptical eye of a range instructor who had witnessed sophisticated equipment falter under the stress of actual use. 20 years of Marine service had instilled in him a distrust of complex mechanisms, particularly when they would be maintained by 19-year-old Marines operating under combat conditions where proper cleaning procedures competed with immediate survival necessities. The Unertl scope's external adjustment knobs and sliding mount system represented precisely the kind of complexity that made experienced non-commissioned officers uneasy. "That contraption's got more moving parts than a pocket watch," Harrison muttered as he examined the scope's micrometer mechanisms during a morning inspection. The Marine beside him, Corporal James Mitchell from rural Kentucky, nodded in agreement while carefully cleaning the scope's objective lens with a piece of soft cloth. Mitchell's hunting background had made him a natural candidate for sniper training, but his practical experience with simple, dependable equipment made him equally wary of the scope's delicate appearance. The weather during the testing period had been typical for coastal North Carolina: humid, unpredictable, and challenging for precision equipment. When rain began to fall during a particularly critical accuracy trial, both Harrison and Mitchell watched nervously as moisture accumulated on the scope's external surfaces. Within hours, the delicate adjustment mechanisms began to bind, requiring meticulous cleaning and lubrication before normal function could be restored. Back in Pittsburgh, John Unertl Sr. received detailed reports of each equipment failure with the methodical focus of a craftsman who understood that perfection existed only in theory, not in the field conditions where his scopes would ultimately be employed. Working 16-hour days in his small shop, he handcrafted modifications to address each documented problem, grinding lenses by hand and machining components to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Emma Unertl brought her husband coffee at midnight, finding him hunched over precision lathes that filled the workshop with the sound of cutting steel. His thick German accent carried the weight of personal investment as he explained his latest refinements. "They need they to work perfectly," he explained. "Young men like our Hans, they are depending on they's equipment." The mention of their son, then training with the Marines somewhere in the Pacific, infused his already consuming work with an added sense of urgency. The fragility issue emerged as the most significant impediment to military adoption. During sustained field trials, the scope's mounting system proved problematic under repeated recoil stress. The long tube shifted minutely with each shot, necessitating constant re-zeroing that negated much of the system's accuracy advantage. Humidity caused the external adjustments to seize, rendering precise micrometer knobs into frozen mechanisms that resisted all attempts at field adjustment. Military evaluators documented every failure with the thoroughness characteristic of professional equipment assessment. One particularly damaging report stated bluntly, "Too fragile for sustained combat use, requires excessive maintenance under field conditions, not recommended for adoption." The words carried the authority of field experience and the weight of institutional responsibility for Marine lives. Despite mounting evidence of durability concerns, Marine casualties in the Pacific were escalating with each amphibious assault. Guadalcanal had demonstrated that Japanese forces were prepared for extended defensive operations, utilizing carefully prepared positions and superior optics to inflict maximum casualties on advancing American forces. Tarawa would prove even more devastating, with Marines advancing across open beaches under fire from concealed positions that existing equipment could not effectively engage. Corporal Mitchell received orders for the Pacific in late summer, joining the 4th Marine Division as it prepared for operations that would test American amphibious doctrine against increasingly sophisticated enemy defenses. His final letter home to Kentucky reflected the mixture of confidence and apprehension that characterized young Marines heading toward their first combat experience. "Mom," he wrote, "this new scope is something else. I can see individual leaves on trees 600 yards away. Feels like cheating." The first production models began reaching Marine units in late 1942. Each rifle was meticulously packed in wooden cases, accompanied by detailed maintenance instructions and specialized cleaning equipment. The M1903A1 National Match rifles, selected for the sniper program, represented precision weapons originally manufactured for Camp Perry competition shooting. Their polished bolts were specifically blued to prevent reflections that might betray a sniper's position to enemy observers. Technical specifications reflected a compromise between civilian precision and military durability requirements. Each scope provided 8-power magnification through a 1.5-inch objective lens, nearly double the light-gathering capability of existing military optics. Its effective range exceeded 800 yards under optimal conditions, a 60% improvement over previous capabilities. The mounting system secured the scope to specially prepared M1903A1 rifles via machined blocks that provided solid attachment points while allowing for field removal when necessary. Initial combat reports from mid-1943 painted an encouraging picture of the system's battlefield effectiveness. Marine snipers operating on Tarawa reported successful engagements at ranges exceeding 800 yards, distances previously considered safe zones for enemy movement. Japanese forces, accustomed to operating beyond the reach of American small arms, found themselves vulnerable at ranges they had considered tactically secure. However, these encouraging reports were soon followed by devastating assessments from units operating in the humid jungle environments that characterized much of the Pacific theater. The 1st Marine Division's after-action report from Cape Gloucester was brutally direct. Unable to make effective use of M1903A1 Unertl sniper rifles due to climate and terrain conditions. Similar assessments arrived from other units operating in high humidity environments where precision mechanisms failed with alarming regularity. The negative reports landed on desks at Marine Corps headquarters like grenades, each one undermining confidence in equipment that had shown such promise during controlled testing. Colonel Sterling's voice carried the weight of vindication as he reviewed the field assessments. "I told you that contraption wouldn't work under real combat conditions." The institutional preference for proven systems over innovative solutions seemed validated by battlefield experience that could not be refuted. The decision to proceed stemmed not from confidence in the equipment, but from desperation born of mounting casualties across the Pacific theater. By late 1943, Marine commanders faced the grim calculus of amphibious warfare. Every major assault resulted in thousands of American casualties, many inflicted by enemy snipers operating at ranges where existing American equipment could not effectively respond. The strategic imperative to maintain offensive momentum against Japanese island fortifications demanded solutions, even imperfect ones, that carried significant operational risks. Captain Van Orton received authorization for limited procurement, but the conditions attached to the decision reflected institutional skepticism regarding the Unertl system's battlefield viability. Each scope would be issued with detailed maintenance protocols specifically developed for high humidity environments. Special carrying cases made from moisture-resistant material would protect the delicate mechanisms during transport. Most critically, the scopes would be mounted exclusively on M1903A1 National Match rifles, precision weapons whose inherent accuracy could maximize whatever advantages the optical system provided. John Unertl, Sr., understood that this represented his final opportunity to demonstrate that civilian precision engineering could effectively serve military needs. Working around the clock in his Pittsburgh workshop, he implemented modifications designed to address every documented failure from the field trials. The scope tubes received additional internal sealing to prevent moisture infiltration. External adjustment mechanisms were redesigned with larger, more robust components, capable of functioning even when contaminated with sand or salt spray. Each lens was individually tested under simulated combat conditions, including extreme temperatures and humidity levels typical of Pacific operations. The production target of 2,800 scopes represented a monumental undertaking for a small optical company that had previously focused on civilian target shooting equipment. Emma Unertl managed the business expansion with quiet efficiency, hiring additional craftsmen and organizing production schedules that balanced her husband's perfectionist tendencies with military delivery deadlines. Each scope required dozens of precision machined components and hours of hand assembly by skilled technicians who understood that their work would ultimately be tested under conditions where failure meant American casualties. The M120.03A1 rifles, designated for the sharpshooting initiative, underwent substantial alterations to ensure seamless integration with the Unertl mounting apparatus. Expert gunsmiths at the Philadelphia Navy Yard devised specialized protocols for affixing the mounting hardware, meticulously machining each firearm's receiver to exact specifications. This precision ensured consistent accuracy under repeated deployment. The elegantly polished bolts, a hallmark of national match firearms, were carefully treated to a deep bluing process. This eliminated any reflective surfaces that could potentially reveal a marksman's concealed position to enemy reconnaissance. The trigger mechanisms were meticulously calibrated to deliver sharp, predictable breaks, perfectly complementing the advanced capabilities of the optical sights. Corporal James Mitchell was issued his designated rifle in early 1944 during his training with the 4th Marine Division at Camp Pendleton, California. This particular firearm, bearing the serial number 1464, displayed the distinct markings of the Springfield Armory, along with the superior craftsmanship that set national match weaponry apart from standard infantry arms. The Unertl scope, mounted directly above the action, represented the pinnacle of months of dedicated development. Its 8-power magnification, coupled with exceptionally clear optics, provided target discernment that far surpassed anything Mitchell had previously encountered. The training program developed for the Unertl system placed equal emphasis on meticulous maintenance as it did on marksmanship proficiency. Marines were instructed in the proper disassembly and cleaning of the scope's external components, utilizing specialized instruments engineered for field conditions. Protecting the equipment from moisture became a paramount skill, with detailed guidance on the correct application of protective coverings and desiccant materials. These precautions were vital to prevent humidity-induced malfunctions that had plagued earlier testing phases. Each designated marksman was required to demonstrate complete mastery of scope maintenance before receiving clearance for combat deployment. Initial field trials conducted at Camp Pendleton yielded results that confirmed the system's considerable potential, while also underscoring the learning curve inherent in its effective utilization. In the arid climate of California, the modified scopes performed flawlessly, achieving remarkable accuracy at distances extending well beyond 800 yards. Marines who had previously grappled with the limitations of existing gear suddenly found themselves capable of executing precise shots at ranges they had never before considered feasible. Mitchell's aptitude with the system developed with remarkable speed. His prior experience hunting in Kentucky provided him with an innate understanding of precision shooting, which translated seamlessly into military applications. His training scores consistently surpassed the required qualification benchmarks, with shot groupings at 600 yards measuring less than 4 inches, utilizing standard M2 ball ammunition. More significantly, his confidence in the equipment grew with each training session, fostering the crucial psychological fortitude essential for effective combat performance. The initial combat deployment of the M1903A1 rifle, equipped with the Unertl system, occurred during the 4th Marine Division's offensive operations on the Marshall Islands in early 1944. Quadriline and Majuro offered ideal testing environments for the precision scopes, characterized by a relatively dry climate, exceptional visibility, and defensive terrain that favored long-range engagements over the close-quarters jungle warfare prevalent in earlier Pacific campaigns. Early reports were highly encouraging, with Marine snipers achieving confirmed eliminations at distances exceeding 900 yards. Mitchell's first combat engagement utilizing the Unertl scope took place during the suppression of Japanese strongholds on Quadriline's northern shores. From a concealed vantage point nestled behind coral formations, he engaged enemy machine gun crews that were directing suppressing fire against advancing Marine infantry units. The scope's 8-power magnification facilitated precise target identification at ranges where enemy combatants appeared as distinct individuals rather than indistinct shapes. His inaugural confirmed kill occurred at a measured distance of 820 yards, a feat that would have been utterly impossible with the standard equipment then in use. The psychological ramifications of successful long-range engagements extended far beyond immediate tactical advantages. Marines who had previously felt outmaneuvered by Japanese marksmen now possessed the capacity to dominate the precision shooting environment that characterized a significant portion of combat operations in the Pacific theater. Enemy forces, accustomed to operating within what they perceived as secure distances, suddenly found themselves vulnerable to American fire at ranges previously beyond their concern. However, the relatively forgiving environmental conditions of the Marshall Islands provided an incomplete assessment of the system's true durability. The subsequent major deployment would involve the assault on Saipan, where tropical humidity and the omnipresent coral dust associated with cave warfare would severely test every assumption regarding equipment reliability. Mitchell and his fellow sharpshooters prepared for operations that would challenge not only their marksmanship skills, but also their ability to maintain intricate optical equipment under conditions that had rendered previous generations of delicate mechanisms inoperable. The technical specifications governing the Unertl system's performance reflected a delicate balance with durability, a compromise that would ultimately determine the program's ultimate success or failure. While the 8-power magnification offered substantial advantages in target identification and engagement, the longer scope tubes necessitated more robust mounting systems, which in turn added weight and complexity. The 1.5-inch objective lenses collected significantly more light compared to existing military optics, enabling effective operation during periods of marginal visibility. However, these larger glass surfaces presented a greater susceptibility to environmental contamination. Production quality control became increasingly critical as deployment schedules accelerated to meet combat demands. Each scope underwent rigorous individual testing, including accuracy verification, mechanical function checks, and environmental stress tests designed to simulate field conditions. John Unertl Sr. personally oversaw the inspection of every 10th scope, his discerning craftsman's eye detecting minute imperfections that might elude routine quality assurance, yet could prove disastrous under the stress of combat. The human toll of equipment failure remained a stark reality for all involved in the program's development and implementation. Each negative field report represented not merely technical shortcomings, but American casualties that could potentially have been averted with more dependable equipment. The imperative to succeed weighed heavily on both civilian contractors and military personnel, generating an urgency that transcended typical peacetime development cycles and demanded immediate solutions capable of saving lives rather than offering eventual improvements. The debriefing reports from Saipan arrived at Marine Corps headquarters in Washington like a series of devastating blows, each document eroding confidence in equipment that had previously demonstrated such promise under controlled circumstances. The assessment provided by the 1st Marine Division proved particularly damaging, declaring the M1903A1 Unertl sniper rifles ineffective due to environmental factors and maintenance requirements that exceeded field capabilities. Similar reports subsequently emerged from other units, presenting a consistent narrative of precision equipment failing under the harsh realities of tropical combat. Colonel William Sterling's voice resonated with a sense of vindication as he reviewed the mounting evidence of systemic failure during a tense equipment board meeting in late summer of 1944. "Gentlemen," he declared, "I cautioned against the adoption of civilian equipment for military purposes. These reports confirm that intricate mechanisms have no place in combat." His words encapsulated an institutional mindset that prioritized proven simplicity over innovative complexity, a conservative philosophy that appeared immutable. The technical deficiencies documented in the field reports followed predictable patterns, validating every apprehension voiced by skeptical military evaluators. Humidity ingress caused optical elements to fog, rendering the scopes useless during critical engagements. Coral dust, prevalent in cave warfare operations, abraded the external adjustment mechanisms to the point of seizure. Most critically, the mounting systems loosened under sustained recoil, necessitating constant re-zeroing that nullified the accuracy advantages the system was designed to deliver. Corporal James Mitchell's personal experience vividly illustrated the human cost of equipment failure under combat conditions. During the brutal fighting for Saipan's Central Highlands, his Unertl scope malfunctioned at the precise moment when its precision shooting capability was most critically needed. A Japanese marksman, concealed within a cave complex, had been systematically targeting Marine squad leaders, inflicting casualties that disrupted unit cohesion and slowed the advance through terrain that favored defensive operations. Mitchell had identified the enemy position through patient observation, noting the muzzle flashes that revealed the sniper's location approximately 400 yards across a valley filled with the smoke and dust of ongoing artillery barrages. The engagement distance fell well within the capabilities of his M1903A1 rifle when using iron sights, but the concealed nature of the target necessitated optical magnification for precise shot placement through the narrow aperture that presented the enemy sniper's sole vulnerability. As Mitchell assumed his firing position behind a cluster of volcanic rocks, the Unertl scope's objective lens fogged over completely, the humid tropical air condensing on the glass surface faster than it could evaporate in the oppressive heat. Attempts to clear the lens using approved cleaning procedures proved futile as moisture continued to accumulate despite his meticulous adherence to maintenance protocols. The external adjustment knobs, coated with fine coral dust that had infiltrated every piece of equipment during weeks of cave warfare, refused to budge despite the application of lubricants specified in the technical manuals. Compelled to engage using iron sights at a range where precise shot placement was paramount, Mitchell fired 3 carefully aimed rounds at the cave opening where muzzle flashes had betrayed the enemy position. The Japanese marksman responded instantly, his projectile striking Mitchell's protective cover and showering him with rock fragments before a second round found flesh, tearing through his left shoulder with the distinctive crack that indicated a high-velocity impact. Mitchell's dispirited radio transmission to his company commander mirrored the frustration felt by Marines throughout the Pacific Theater who had been promised revolutionary equipment, only to receive delicate mechanisms that proved unreliable under combat stress. "This thing is more fragile than my grandmother's china," he stated. "Request permission to use my standard rifle for the remainder of this operation." His words conveyed personal disappointment and tactical anger that transcended individual experience, embodying the collective disillusionment of Marines who had invested considerable effort in training with equipment that proved undependable when their lives depended on it. Back in Pittsburgh, John Unertl Sr. received the devastating field reports with the methodical attention of a craftsman who understood that each documented failure represented a potential casualty that could have been prevented with a more robust design. Rather than conceding defeat, he systematically analyzed every failure, treating each negative report as valuable data that could inform improved solutions. Working 18-hour days in his workshop, he developed novel sealing techniques designed to prevent moisture infiltration under extreme humidity conditions. The environmental challenges confronted by precision optics in the Pacific Theater surpassed anything encountered in civilian target shooting applications. Humidity levels regularly exceeded 90%, creating conditions where metal surfaces corroded rapidly and optical elements fogged, despite protective coatings. Coral dust possessed abrasive qualities that eroded surface finishes and contaminated lubricated mechanisms faster than field maintenance could address. Salt spray from amphibious operations introduced additional corrosion issues, attacking both steel and brass components with relentless persistence. Marine armorers in the Pacific began devising unauthorized modifications based on field experience that technical manuals could not anticipate. At the Philadelphia Navy Yard, skilled technicians collaborated with combat veterans to identify practical solutions for environmental protection that extended beyond official specifications. The disparity between equipment design and operational reality created fertile ground for innovation that bureaucratic procurement systems were ill-equipped to address through conventional channels. The breakthrough that would ultimately vindicate the Unertl system emerged from an unexpected source. Marine Sergeant Robert Chen, operating with the 3rd Marine Division on Okinawa, developed field techniques for safeguarding his precision scope during transport and storage that significantly enhanced its reliability under combat conditions. Utilizing salvaged Japanese silk and a spirit of marine ingenuity, he crafted moisture-proof covers that could be rapidly deployed and retracted as tactical situations demanded. Chen's improvised protection system enabled him to maintain his Unertl scope in operational condition throughout the brutal fighting for Okinawa's southern defensive positions. His kill record attested to the system's potential when properly maintained, with 23 confirmed enemy casualties at ranges averaging over 700 yards. More importantly, his success demonstrated that the equipment could function reliably when operators understood and adapted to its environmental limitations, rather than expecting it to perform identically to simpler, more robust alternatives. The tactical advantages afforded by successful long-range engagements became evident to Marine commanders who witnessed the system's effectiveness under optimal conditions. Enemy machine gun crews that had dominated defensive positions through superior fields of fire found themselves vulnerable to precision fire at distances they had considered secure. Japanese snipers, who had previously outranged American forces, discovered that their concealed positions could be identified and engaged with devastating accuracy when atmospheric conditions favored optical performance. However, these isolated successes occurred against a backdrop of systemic failure that undermined confidence in the program's overall viability. For every Chen who achieved remarkable results through exceptional maintenance discipline, dozens of other Marines struggled with equipment that failed at critical junctures. The statistical reality of combat operations demanded reliability percentages that the Unertl system, despite its theoretical advantages, could not consistently deliver under field conditions. Orders began circulating through Marine units in the Pacific, directing the phase-out of M1903A1 Unertl sniper rifles in favor of more robust alternatives. This decision reflected institutional priorities that favored consistent mediocrity over exceptional performance that came with unacceptable reliability risks. Marines who had invested months in mastering the system's intricacies found themselves undergoing retraining with simpler equipment that offered fewer capabilities but greater durability under adverse conditions. The human cost of this transition extended beyond tactical considerations to encompass the psychological impact on Marines who had experienced the system's capabilities under favorable circumstances. Mitchell, recuperating from his shoulder wound at a field hospital on Saipan, articulated the bitter disappointment felt by many snipers who understood precisely what they were forfeiting. "Give me equipment that works 70% of the time over equipment that's perfect 10% of the time," he reportedly stated. Dead Marines don't benefit from theoretical advantages. The Forgotten War commenced with forgotten equipment. When North Korean forces breached the 38th parallel in June 1950, the Marine Corps found itself critically deficient in precision shooting capabilities. Years of post-war budget reductions had dwindled sniper programs to mere skeletal training cadres housed in warehouses across the continental United States. Hundreds of M1903A1 rifles, fitted with Unertl scopes, sat in Cosmoline-coded storage, their wartime failures seemingly validating institutional skepticism regarding the compatibility of delicate civilian equipment with military requirements. The resurrection of this discredited system occurred not through deliberate policy decisions, but as a result of practical necessity, born from limited resources and urgent operational demands. Marine units deploying to Korea lacked sufficient modern sniper rifles to meet tactical requirements, compelling quartermasters to issue whatever precision equipment remained available in depot stocks. The same scopes that had faltered in the humid jungles of the Pacific found themselves en route to a peninsula where environmental conditions would prove dramatically different from their prior combat experiences. Korea's arid, mountainous terrain presented operational conditions that played to the Unertl system's strengths rather than exposing its environmental vulnerabilities. Clear atmospheric conditions, prevalent throughout much of the peninsula, enabled maximum utilization of the scope's 8-power magnification and superior light-gathering capabilities. Engagement ranges that regularly exceeded 800 yards favored precision optics over the simpler, shorter-range alternatives that had supplanted the Unertl system in Pacific operations during the waning months of World War II. Marine Corporal Robert Williams received his designated M1903A1 Unertl rifle at the Pusan perimeter in August 1950, viewing the equipment with skepticism inherited from older Marines who had witnessed the system's failures during previous combat engagements. The scope bore the manufacturing marks of John Unertl's Pittsburgh workshop, its brass fittings exhibiting the characteristic green patina of age, yet the optical elements remained crystal clear despite years of storage. Williams's background in hunting in Kentucky provided him with a foundational understanding of precision shooting principles, but the Unertl's 8-power magnification surpassed anything he had previously employed. The training period at Pusan enabled Williams to discover capabilities that had remained largely theoretical rather than practical during the system's troubled Pacific deployment. Under Korea's arid conditions, the external adjustment mechanisms functioned with mechanical precision, allowing for repeatable scope settings across multiple target distances. The mounting system maintained zero stability through hundreds of rounds, eliminating the persistent re-zeroing requirements that had plagued the system during humid tropical operations. Most importantly, the optical clarity remained consistent throughout extended shooting sessions without the fogging issues that had rendered the scopes inoperable during critical Pacific engagements. Williams's first confirmed kill with the Unertl system occurred during defensive operations around the Pusan perimeter in early September 1950. A North Korean marksman positioned on Hill 207 had been systematically targeting Marine machine gun crews, inflicting casualties that disrupted defensive positions crucial for maintaining perimeter integrity. The enemy position, identified through patient observation, was at a measured distance of 940 yards and required precision shot placement through a narrow opening between rock formations that offered the sniper's only vulnerability. This engagement exemplified the system's capabilities under optimal conditions. Williams's careful range estimation, combined with precise windage and elevation adjustments using the scope's external micrometer knobs, resulted in first-round hits at distances that would have necessitated multiple ranging shots with simpler optical systems. An adversary sniper, accustomed to operating beyond the effective reach of American small arms, met their end through accurate gunfire originating from a distance they had deemed tactically safe. News of successful long-range engagements quickly circulated among Marine units deployed along the Korean front, rekindling interest in equipment previously dismissed as unsuitable for battlefield deployment. Through the autumn engagements, Williams's confirmed eliminations steadily increased, reaching 12 enemy combatants by November 1950, all at distances surpassing 700 yards. More notably, his success rate approached 90% for first-round hits when atmospheric conditions allowed for optimal telescopic sight performance. The psychological effect of re-established long-range precision capabilities extended beyond immediate tactical gains to influence broader strategic considerations for Marine sniper doctrine. Enemy forces that had grown comfortable operating at distances they considered secure from American weaponry found themselves exposed to precise engagements at ranges that redefined the tactical landscape. Chinese forces entering the conflict discovered that their numerical superiority could be substantially diminished by individual American snipers equipped with superior optical systems. The performance of the Unertl systems under Korean conditions served as a technical validation of their design principles, systematically documented through real-world application. The very external adjustment mechanisms that had faltered amidst the Pacific's humidity operated flawlessly in Korea's arid climate, providing precise, repeatable settings that ensured consistent accuracy at extended distances. Optical clarity, which had been compromised by tropical dampness, remained pristine across a wide spectrum of temperatures, from the summer's heat to winter conditions nearing -30 degrees Fahrenheit. The stability of the mounting systems under Korean conditions corroborated design choices that had faced criticism during Pacific operations. When properly installed and maintained, The precisely machined mounting blocks offered an exceptionally stable scope attachment, preserving zero integrity through thousands of rounds fired. The longer scope tubes, once deemed cumbersome in jungle warfare, proved advantageous in mountainous terrain, where cover distances facilitated the effective utilization of extended optical systems. Williams's record-setting elimination at 1,200 yards occurred during the intense fighting surrounding Seoul in early 1951. A Chinese sniper positioned within a shelled factory building had been targeting Marine forward observers, hindering effective artillery coordination crucial for suppressing enemy strongholds. The extreme range necessitated meticulous calculations for bullet drop and wind drift, factors the inert scope's precise adjustment mechanisms could accommodate when atmospheric conditions remained stable. The shot, discharged from a concealed position amidst the rubble of a residential area, struck the enemy sniper in the upper torso at a distance that established new benchmarks for Marine precision shooting proficiency. Post-engagement analysis confirmed the range through triangulation measurements, generating documentation that would shape sniper training doctrine for decades. This engagement demonstrated that properly maintained Unertl systems could deliver precision fire at distances approaching the theoretical limits of the .30-06 cartridge's ballistic capabilities. Sergeant James Mitchell, now an instructor at the Marine Sniper School in Quantico, received reports of the Korean successes with a complex mix of emotions, reflecting his own intricate relationship with the Unertl system. His experiences in World War II had instilled in him a harsh lesson about equipment failure during critical moments. However, the Korean outcomes suggested that environmental factors, rather than inherent design flaws, were responsible for the issues encountered in the Pacific theater. John Unertl Jr., who assumed leadership of his father's business following the elder craftsman's passing in 1951, visited Marine Corps installations to solicit feedback from snipers who had employed the system in combat. These discussions yielded valuable insights into the interplay between equipment design and the operational environment, which would inform future development efforts. Mitchell's assessment was characteristically blunt. "Your father's scope saved my life more times than it failed me. We just had to learn how to use it properly." The Korean War provided the extensive field testing that World War II's accelerated deployment schedule had precluded. Under suitable environmental conditions, coupled with appropriate maintenance protocols and operator training, the Unertl system delivered precision shooting capabilities that significantly surpassed existing alternatives. This validation was achieved not through bureaucratic endorsement, but through documented battlefield performance that set new standards for American sniper effectiveness. The lessons learned in Korea would prove prescient for the system's eventual vindication in Vietnam, where environmental conditions mirroring those of the Pacific theater would once again challenge equipment reliability. By that time, however, both the equipment and the Marines utilizing it had evolved, adapting to the system's characteristics rather than expecting it to function like simpler substitutes. The audacious concept had finally encountered the right confluence of conditions and understanding required to unlock its full potential.